Welcome back into the SFS channel, everybody. Today I'll be talking through my 5 must-start running backs here for Week 6 fantasy football. These are players that I really like their outlooks this week, and we'll be discussing the reasons why I have them as strong lineup plays here for this week's game. But first and foremost, before we dive into today's episode, make sure if you're new around here, you drop down and smash that subscribe button. We're less than 100 subs away from 5,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and I appreciate each and every single one of you guys that have helped us get to this milestone here. This is truly a group milestone for us, as we're always looking to be interactive and help one another out here. That's the focus of this channel and what we're all about here at SFS. So thank you guys so much for making this channel what it is. Let's dive into today's episode. All right, here we go. Make sure to smash that like button as we get started today. We'll recap our Week 5 picks here very quickly. This was actually our worst segment of the week in Week 5. We went 2 of 5, so below the bar at 50% there. We did crush 2 of the picks here, but simply got unlucky with the other few ones here. We did have a perfect 5 of 5 segment in one of our lineup advice segments from last week, though, so stay tuned for that and our other lineup advice segments here for this week to figure out which one that was here. We hit on Jeff Wilson big time this week against the Carolina Panthers. That was a big one. Rhamondre Stevenson also crushed it as well against Detroit. His teammate, of course, Damian Harris, went down with a hamstring issue, and then he totally took over and went nuts there. J-Rob missed for this week. Totally unexpected turn of events. The game script, they were favored by 7.5 points. Lost that game by 7, scored 2 field goals. I don't think anyone saw that coming. Miles Sanders here this week didn't get to the bounces on the goal line. Jalen Hurts ended up, stealing 2 of his opportunities there. When he was the back in the game, he just didn't end up scoring the touchdowns there. Bad turn, and he wasn't nearly, Philadelphia didn't win the game nearly as handily as I expected it to. It went on to the wire, almost overtime as well. And then I had Jamal Williams this past week as well. Detroit got their teeth stomped in by New England on the road. There were warning signs for this game. I'm not going to pretend like there wasn't issues in the situation, but the way the game turned out, the turnovers offensively, the frequent fourth down, just inabilities to convert in those situations, setting up New England for easy points, it was a disaster from start to finish, and that was a miss there. So, getting into this week's games now, Breece Hall, New York, taking on the Packers in Green Bay. The first running back I love starting for this week's episode, or this week's games. Now, for Breece Hall, you've got a player who fully erupted in Week 5, looks to be on a full collision course to finish as a top 12 fantasy running back this year. And as I've said for a while now, I did expect there to come a point in time where he's a top 12 weekly lineup play. And I think if we're not there, we might be there after this week's game. This is a guy who is currently the running back 6, so his production to this point in time in the season has been fantastic, and his snap share has popped between the weeks of 3 and 5, increasing incrementally every time until reaching a 66% snap share marker in this past week's games. Now, he had 197 yards against the Miami Dolphins in Week 5 here. Of course, that game had some unique occurrences with Skylar Thompson coming in at quarterback for Miami. However, Breece was absolutely dominant, and one thing that's been really surprising is to see how Zach Wilson has actually elevated his receiving involvement to the next level. Week 1 didn't have awesome production, but had 6 opportunities, catching 2 of those passes. And then this past week had 100 yards receiving and a 79-yard reception that got him down to the 1-yard line. He was actually stopped at the 1 twice this past game, so could have had 3 total touchdowns if he cashed in those looks. But for Breece, it's just a picture-perfect game here for me against Green Bay. They are underdogs by a touchdown right now, 7 points, which I think is a bit unrealistic. I just don't think this Green Bay team, I'm a Packer fan, full disclosure, I don't think they have the juice to really put even bad teams, and the Jets have definitely been an ascending team from 2021 to 2022, but I don't think they have the juice to put these teams away and win by large margins. I think 4 points would be a safer bet. It's 4.5 points. If I was Vegas, that's probably what I'd set the line at here. The reason we talk through these game scripts and numbers for the sports books is because this is how, obviously, the higher authorities are expecting these games to play out. But plain and simple, even at home, I think that the Jets are able, or excuse me, the Packers being at home, the fact that the Jets are on the road here, I don't think Green Bay is able to slow down this rushing attack. They've struggled to stop running backs. Saquon Barkley killed them last week. Dalvin Cook got a really bad Week 1. David Montgomery had a field day against this team. And with how dynamic Breece Hall is here, a very strong start for me in my book. Jeff Wilson, going back to the well here. This is a player that I've really loved in his time as the San Francisco 49ers lead running back. Now, the clock is ticking. I've been an advocate to sell high while you still can. But look, he's got 4 straight games with 10 or more fantasy points without Mitchell dating back to week 1. So weeks 2 through 5 here have been fantastic lineup-worthy games. San Francisco travels on the road in a controlled climate to play the Atlanta Falcons in a dome this week. And plain and simple, despite the injuries, despite being banged up on both sides of the ball here, San Francisco is the more physical football team than basically anyone they line up against from across the field. And Atlanta, while they have been a team that, despite being 5.5-point underdogs, the Atlanta Falcons this week, so that makes San Francisco nearly 6-point favorites, they've covered. They are 5-0 against the spread now to start out this year. And the reason that's important is because this is a team that fights through games late. If you take a look at last week against Tampa Bay, they kind of scratched and clawed their way back into the contest. I believe it was a 21-16 finish. The line was like 10.5 points by kickoff. So showing you that this is a team that doesn't really quit. However, the talent mismatch, again, the physicality level, I expect San Francisco to just punch these guys in the mouth here, run them over, and with the success we've had from Wilson here in this backfield, I really see no reason he slows down. Now, I was interested to see Tevin Coleman's 28% snap share and involvement in the receiving game. He was popping up, making plays for this team last week, but it was Jeff that was still the lead dog, still the workhorse for this team. Fresh off of a 17 rush, 120-yard performance, averaging over 7 yards per carry and having a rushing touchdown as well. He's averaged 4 yards per carry or more every single game that's a starter for this team. So showing you high levels of efficiency there, like 4 yards per carry is kind of the benchmark for being a really solid running back in this league today. And you've also got a guy who has averaged 6 yards per carry or more in 2 of those contests out of 4. So again, as the starter for San Francisco's backfield. So not just, meeting the requisite standards here, but going above and beyond, being an incredibly efficient player here, playing in a very good power run football team. And a guy, again, the game script, I think the situation sets him up for success here, again, on the road against Atlanta. Let's go to Rhamondre Stevenson, another road player here. We've got 3 running backs on the road this week. You know what travels? Good running attacks. New England is a run-first offense taking on Cleveland, which nearly upset the Chargers this past week. However, with Damian Harris expected to be sidelined multiple games here with his hamstring issue, we touched on it at the top of today's episode, Rhamondre Stevenson becomes a very, very good option for lineups in the time being and could potentially flip this backfield on its head and totally take over this thing going forward here. Now, this is a guy who had 25 carries as the lone running back the rest of the way for this team and had 160 yards of production from that. You've also got a guy who has got a quarterback situation that's kind of up in the air right now. We don't know if it's going to be Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi again here. Zappi's actually been a pretty effective game manager for this offense, so maybe if Mac Jones isn't available to go here, they just give him another week to recover, or if he's not 100% rather, instead of risking it and tossing him out there, maybe a risk for re-injury, you roll a Zappi one more week and hope he can get the job done here, because I truly think that and I think this applies for both teams, the spread is just 3 points, so a field goal here, and really, it's really the home field advantage that gives the advantage to Cleveland here, but I think the same can be true about both teams. If they don't turn the football over, have a strong run game, and can just move the ball down the field and play solid defense, they're going to win this game. You don't have to do anything spectacular on either side of the ball in this matchup. You simply have to be the more fundamentally sound offense, and for the Pats, we know that's playing defense, running the football. Their defense absolutely smoked Detroit last week, and we'll see how things turn out here, but I think this is a really strong start, possibly for some of us even a top 12 option in lineups. He's also a solid third down back that can catch the football in space as well, so multifaceted usage for Stevenson here. Kenneth Walker, baby, we're going with the rookie here. I've seen some surprising comments with some skepticism around Kenneth Walker here. I don't think people are really, maybe the wider fantasy community that doesn't play Dynasty and stuff like that isn't aware of who this guy is, but he is an absolute baller, a second-round pick out of Michigan State this year, ran a 4.38 40-yard dash, which places him in the 98th percentile of running backs in the National Football League, so an incredibly explosive player, has a great one-cut skill set, and can really be a home run hitter. We saw him score a 69-yard rushing touchdown against the Saints, which historically, over the past 5 years or so, have had a really good rushing defense. It's a little bit eroding this year. Some personnel have walked out the door, and this is a team kind of in a transition period right now, but still impressive nonetheless. So Ken Walker can definitely be a heavy hitter in terms of his ability to deliver 10-plus fantasy point plays, not games, like a play, 40-plus yard touchdown run is a 10-point play in a standard league. So there's a lot of potential here. The ceiling is very, very high. And this, surprisingly, I've said this multiple times this week, but Seattle has continued to blow me away with their fantasy friendliness in this offense. They've got a team that is scoring points at very high rates. You've got back-to-back 35-plus point games, and they're really taking steps forward. They haven't plateaued like I expected them to after week 1 against Seattle. They haven't had this dramatic crash down from the high heavens where I expected, you would have this emotional win over Denver in week 1, and you were kind of riding the high of that game, and then all of a sudden, that was this team's week 1 Super Bowl. That hasn't been the case. Geno Smith's still balling out. The offensive line play has been very good here. They've got themselves 2 established starting tackles, and they do have, physical play up front. So the door is very open for Kenneth Walker, being just 2.5-point underdogs at Seattle. This is a home game for Kenneth Walker here to make a splash, impactful fantasy lineup play here, and be someone that you can utilize moving forward. So what I do want to say about this matchup is you got the fact that this is his first game as the lead running back. He's fresh, had a hernia issue over the course of the summer, but hasn't been worked in too much. So the hits are light on Walker here, and you're probably going to see the best version of him going forward. Now, another critical point for me here is without Rashad Penny, that's, I can't believe I haven't mentioned it to this point. The reason he's a viable lineup piece is because Penny's out for the season with a lower leg injury, a broken leg, as a matter of fact, a fractured tibia. So without him there, I believe it is Travis Homer on the IR as well. This should really be a one-man show here. Who have we got? DJ Dallas still factored into this situation, but this could be the purest workhorse situation for any Seattle running back that we've seen to this point in the year. So if the touches come his direction, if he's efficient, all good things to take a look at here, and just hopefully the matchup ends up playing out as it is expected to here in Week 6. And then finally, Melvin Gordon here taking on Los Angeles on Monday Night Football. Now, the Broncos are 5-point underdogs. I don't love that. There is some potential risk here in the game script because it could get out of hand, particularly, we'll talk about it in a second here, but I do think that he'll be able to do enough to put up a solid floor for this week's games, which is why I really like him. And then, of course, the red zone ability, the goal line capability of him to score a touchdown also boosts that ceiling up a little bit higher than it would be per se if Javonte Williams were in this game. So for Melvin, you do have the presence of Mike Boone. Maybe Latavius Murray gets worked in a little bit more here. But the key for me is the fact that Russell Wilson is banged up right now. You've got yourself a struggling quarterback playing at less than 100% who had a PRP injection into his right shoulder, aka his throwing arm, that has been impacting his play the last 2 weeks here. And you can see it on the field. His deep ball hasn't been as good. I feel like he's been pulling throws a little bit. There hasn't been as much zing on the back end of his passes. So for me, that screams run the football. This defense has been playing phenomenal with the exception of the Raiders game this season, and they need to be able to keep this within a score or maybe, a touchdown, a field goal, 10 points here. They cannot let Herbert get out of hand here and hang a big number on him. So I think the way you do that is you just trust your defense. You run the football here. You put it in the hands of Melvin Gordon. Now, hopefully he doesn't fumble and totally screw over his team and himself in this fantasy situation here. But I am fairly optimistic that going forward, you might see a 17 to 20 touch game for Melvin in Week 6 and hopefully get him close to the end zone, score a touchdown. He did have some nice scrimmage yardage in the Week 5 Thursday Night Football matchup. Not to mention you've had a long week of rest and recovery to prepare for this game, so hopefully Nathaniel Hackett can at least hold it together and keep himself in a balanced game plan approach here. So Melvin Gordon, our final of our 5 must-start running backs for this week. He did, one last note here, have a 56% snap share on Thursday night against Indianapolis in a short 4-day turnaround from that Javonte Williams season-ending injury. So, and the last thing here, teams have shown the ability to move the football up and down the field against Los Angeles here. Nick Chubb averaged over 7 yards per carry, 7.88 yards per clip against LA just a week ago. Now, Melvin Gordon's no Nick Chubb here. Nick Chubb is a more talented player. He's got a better offensive line. But hey, if Gordon can give us 4.5 yards per carry here, I think that'll be enough to get the job done at the end of the day. And again, maintain those solid floor levels for us. And if he finds the end zone, might just make things a little bit better here. So to recap, Breece Hall at Green Bay, loving that matchup. Rhamondre Stevenson at Cleveland. Ken Walker at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Melvin Gordon here at Los Angeles on Monday Night Football with a banged-up quarterback. And again, expecting a run-heavy game script for this team to try and keep the ball out of Russ's hands. And then Jeff Wilson at Atlanta, our 5 picks of the week. So Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, make sure subscribe if you're new around here. We are pushing towards new milestones here at SFS. I appreciate all of you guys. Go check out our Week 6 fantasy football playlist for more lineup advice, trade advice. For some reason, if you haven't done your waiver wire pickups yet, go check those videos out. We've got a lot of stuff for you guys to take advantage of here, so go and do so, and I will see you there. Peace out.